Now, following the spate of councillors being killed across the country, the NFP is calling for changes in legislation that governs the elections. The National Freedom Party is proposing that whenever a councillor has been murdered, no by-elections must be held. Instead, a political party that a murdered councillor represented must be allowed to nominate a new councillor. Joining me now to talk about this is National Freedom Party Secretary General Canaan Mdletshe, as well as Patriotic Alliance's head of legal, Eugene Botha. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. Mdletshe, let me begin with you. I mean, the fact that councillors are being gunned down now almost on a weekly in South Africa is a cause for concern. Firstly, why are councillors under siege, and why are we failing to protect our councillors in municipalities?
Good evening, Thabo, and to the viewers. Quite clearly, Thabo, the problem we are facing as a country has reached a point where it is totally unacceptable that week in and week out you will get information that councillor A or B has been assassinated. And the main reason we believe councillors are attacked is simply because the local government, or the sphere of local government, is not in a way regulated when it comes to individuals who are candidates or who will be councillors. That's why then it is easy for anyone to just, because the person can sing loudly or chant slogans in party meetings, then the person is nominated to be a councillor, only to find that the person cannot even sign on a simple form. Therefore, our view as the National Freedom Party is that we need to regulate the manner in which councillors are elected. We need to make sure that we elect or we nominate individuals that are capable to deliver services, not individuals that will, at some stage during the course of the day or week, will revolt in violence to solve whatever the problem are. Therefore, the National Freedom Party is convinced that if we are, as public, as a society, elect people based on their education rather than based on their charm, I think we are going to have lesser and lesser councillors getting killed.
Yeah. But are you not then, by that, eliminating a very important part of the process, that is public opinion and public holding the councillors accountable, right? In South Africa, what happens is when a vacancy is created, in order to fill that vacancy, you once again go through a process where you go to the people, and the people themselves are the ones who give you a mandate. And in some instances, it's also a reflection of a change in trends within communities, where maybe they feel we must go for by-elections because a particular councillor is not performing. So that public role, it seems to me, it's quite important than to just remove it and then have the political party do the nomination.
It is quite very important, as you are saying. But I think what is more important for us is the fact that we've got instances where by-elections are manufactured or are created by individuals who've got their own agendas. And in those instances, that's why we are saying as NFP, if a councillor has been murdered, there shouldn't be a by-election. If a councillor has resigned or has been expelled from the party, yes, we can have a by-election under those conditions. But where a councillor has been murdered and police can be able to trace that this has been a very organized killing, we don't need to have by-elections, because the main reason why we have by-elections in our municipalities is the simple fact that people will go to an election, they lose, and they know that they got a second chance during the by-election, and they'll make sure that they use every opportunity available to make sure that they get a by-election. And we are saying, let's abolish the by-elections and allow a political party that has won a ward previously to nominate someone within its rank to go and represent the party, because it's the will of the people of that ward who have elected the candidate from their particular party.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back in a moment and get reaction from Patriotic Alliance's head of legal, Eugene Botha. And, of course, this conversation continues on In Focus. Stay with us. You're live with us tonight. You're in Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405, and the conversation continues. We have NFP Secretary General Canaan Mdletshe, as well as Patriotic Alliance's Head of Legal, Eugene Botha. Eugene, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. Firstly, that question to you as well. Why are councillors such easy targets, or seemingly are becoming easy targets these days, and why are they under siege, and why are we failing to protect our councillors, and what do you make of the proposed suggestion around by-elections?
Thank you, Clavo. Thank you for the opportunity, and good evening to the listener. So first off, I just want to express our sincere condolences to the ward councillors that have passed away. It's a terrible tragedy, and the sort of violence that's entering our political environment is stunning, it's shocking, in fact. And we really would hope that political parties will exercise discipline and ensure that these sort of things don't happen, and that if there's any word of it, that it gets dealt with. I think the key thing is that politics in South Africa has really become very competitive, and we've seen within parties and within organizations, potentially because of the lack of discipline, members are attacking each other. I'm not so certain that many of these murders are done or perpetrated by other parties. You know, if your party's won a ward, it's likely to win the ward again. So it's very difficult to infer from the facts that different political parties are murdering members, but we do see an enormous amount of competition amongst ward candidates to get that post, to get into that position, and there's numerous reasons for that. But it is something that has been encouraged within our politics because it's become very competitive, and a lot of people are willing to do whatever it takes to get that seat. And it's something that within the
linked in any way, sorry, Eugene, is it linked in any way with the lack of employment, and therefore people see this as a way to employment, but also not only that, as a way to access to other economic opportunities?
Potentially, I think a lot of people, specifically in rural or impoverished wards, lack opportunities, and this is a good opportunity to secure a steady income, and to also try and make a difference within their community. I don't think it's necessarily nefarious. I think a lot of ward councillors genuinely have the best interest of their community at heart, and compete heavily for that position in order to do the right thing, because there are also a lot of people who don't have the best interest of their community at heart. So it's become very competitive, and yes, there is an edge of desperation. I think whenever violence comes into the picture, it's driven by that desperation. And I think it's important that we investigate that. I don't think we must jump to conclusions. I don't think that we must summarily change the laws. What is the point of changing a law when we don't know what the cause of the problem is? So I have some concerns around that. You know, the law has been set in place for a reason, and it's very difficult to change these laws. As we saw earlier late last year when they tried to change the dates of the elections. And it's something that should be a last resort. I think there's a number of internal processes that can be followed, and specifically any ward councillor that feels that their life is at risk should certainly report it to the police and also get their party involved and let them know. And I can tell you, the Patriotic Alliance, if we receive any reports like this, we take it very seriously, and we ensure that our members are protected and that the police are informed and can take the necessary steps. So I think there's a number of alternatives that are available, but to remove the by-election process, I think is extreme, and it certainly has an impact on people's right to vote and their freedom to choose on that election day. I think, you know, obviously at the circumstances, I don't want to seem callous. It's not that I don't care that somebody's been murdered, but you know, we must be very careful that we don't change the system, the electoral system, and a statement like, you know, the party should keep it. Who does that incentivize then to remove that councillor? Because there's always a second or a third in that ranking that would have an interest in becoming that ward councillor. So I don't know if this is the solution. I think that it needs more investigation. It needs a thorough understanding of the problem. But I certainly would hope that the police and that the political parties get a grip of the situation. We certainly don't want to see it spiraling further out of control.
Mdletshe, I mean, it's a very strong statement that you're saying that by-elections are manufactured, implying there that members of other political parties will go to the extent of murdering councillors of other political parties just in order for them to trigger by-elections. I'm sure there are other ways in which by-elections could be triggered.
Quite correct, Thabo. Yes, the statement might be a little bit extreme, but well, if I may ask you, how would you feel if your party has contested the by-election, an election in Ward 15, and you lose the council just because you lost one seat? Wouldn't you, be tempted to go to extreme and find other ways of making sure that you reclaim or you win that municipality? That's why our view is that it seems like there are people who, whenever they lose, they go back, they sit down and strategize on how we can get back to the council, because the municipality coffers are now what promote all these killings. Because each and every individual wants to be a member of the council so that they can be able to access or to have control over tenders and then all other resources. That's why we are of the view that there is a big chance that by-elections are created simply because each and every individual wants to be a member of a council so that they can access these monies that are supposed to be assisting us in our society, in our communities, in delivering services. But instead, we all know what is happening in our country.
As the NFP, are you convinced that these are inter-party killings as opposed to intra-party killings? And there's very few details around the actual origins of these violent acts, these murders, whether they come from internal party politics or they are coming from outside politics.
From where we're coming from, there's a thin line between the two. But our experience informs us that in most cases it's the opposition that orchestrates the majority of the killing, merely because they want to take control over the municipality. That is why we are saying, as much as there could be internal factors where parties from one political party, where individuals from one political party will be fighting over a position and they end up killing each other. But in most cases, our experiences informs us that it's the opposition. Because as I've indicated earlier, that each and every councillor wants to get a hand in a cookie jar. They want to get access to these resources, and there's only one way. If there's a councillor that is spending only way, you have to eliminate the councillor so that it can be a member of a municipality, so that it can be able to access all these tenders. That's why we are saying as NFP that in most cases, we're not saying that's the only, but in most cases, it's opposition parties who, for whatever reason, they might have lost the control of the municipality, therefore they've lost their bread and butter, and they will do anything and everything to make sure that they reclaim or they retain the municipality so that they can be able to access and control the funds that are there.
Eugene, how do we make this position of councillors to be really more about serving the people, more than to be seen as a gateway to resource? Because I don't really know how much power do councillors have in making decisions, in directing tenders, in directing business opportunities, and so on and so forth. How do we remove that from the purview of councillors so their focus just really becomes about delivery to communities?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point, because I think it's important also to educate people that the councillor doesn't actually have any interest in those are specifically in the administrative part. And the ward councillors, they really just give a mandate to the administrators in council. It's actually against the law for a ward councillor to interfere in that administration to give any direct instructions to them. So look, I do understand my colleague's point in that where there's absolute power in municipalities, where a political party has a 51% majority, it is easier for them to influence these things because that 51% majority gives them the ability to control the fate of those employees. Administrators are permanent employees, and the council has this ability to hire and fire. So the political arm decides who gets appointed in a sense. And because of that, that's where the leverage is. That's where politicians, where there's a 51% majority, that's where they can leverage these tenders going in the direction they need to go. So we know that this is a reality in South Africa. And I think probably at this point where we are now is, I know hung councils are seen as this great evil and coalitions are this great evil, but I actually like to think of it as the way forward, because when you have a coalition, you don't have a 51% majority. You have smaller parties joining with bigger parties and keeping an eye on each other. I can tell you where we are in coalition, we're certainly not just tagging along and towing the line. We are the Patriotic Alliance and we stand for certain things. And where we are in coalition, we're not going to tolerate corruption and threats on the administrators. We want to see clean governance. So, yeah, it's a tricky one because the reality is councillors don't have that right. They have absolutely no authority to direct where tenders go or to influence those things, except, of course, as my colleague has pointed out, where larger political parties have lost that ultimate authority, that ultimate majority. That could happen. But, you know, there's a by-election can be called in a multiple of other ways. You know, if the person resigns or if the provincial MEC removes that person, dismisses them, or if the community lodges a complaint and the person gets dismissed. So, you know, murder is absolutely the last resort. It seems like an extremely violent way to do something that could be done much simpler. You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to kill an ant, if you pardon the pun. But in essence, there's so many other ways to force the by-election. In terms of the law, within the rules of the law, that murder is really an extreme form of that. And I do appreciate that this is something that is happening, and I just think that perhaps we need to maybe educate people who are potentially standing as ward councillors to a higher degree to understand that as a ward councillor you don't have access to those levers. You would be breaking the law if you're getting involved in any sort of tender rigging. But yeah, it is certainly a concern that these things are happening, and we certainly need to look at the traditional ways of protecting people's lives. I think, as I say, with police protection and with these councillors also speaking up and letting it be known. I know in certain municipalities where councillors get threatened, their lives get threatened, the municipality can issue them bodyguards. And that's within the budget. So there's a number of ways in which to solve this problem that don't necessarily result in a change to the law and how things get done in South Africa in terms of the by-elections and the election process.
Appreciate your time, Eugene. Mdletshe, thank you very much for joining us as well this evening here on In Focus. A quick look at